Hello, everyone, and welcome to Midnight on the Prairie. This is your host, Kevin Kelly. We're going to pick up now with part 2 of my conversation with Garland Landrith. And Garland is now going to be telling us about the Global Consciousness Project out of Princeton University.
It started out actually on a kind of intention thing. It evolved into a non-intention thing.
Okay.
Because the first two studies where they had Princeton kids going to university try to change the output of a random number. I call it a random number. It really wasn't random number. It was electromagnetic fields from the outer space, cosmic radiation. And so the cosmic radiation is very, very reliable. In fact, you can run atomic clocks on it.
Right.
So the output from the machines is 101010, like that. Then they had kids from the Princeton, I think it was, concentrate on the machines to see if they could change them. And they found that after hundreds of thousands of trials, and that's a lot of trials,
Yeah.
they got an effect, but it's extremely weak. But they got an effect.
Through just thinking,
You're right.
meditating on it to make it change. Right. Okay.
Then they came up with a brilliant idea. Let's say if we just said of one person, let's put groups in together and see what happens. And so they started putting groups, and of course the effect was stronger. So then they had a really brilliant, really extremely brilliant, and I don't know if they'd seen my research by then or not, but definitely it was people who were in the know started to realize there was something going on because the TM people announced the research and all over the place, and they were pretty big at that when those started. That's the one. TM was from Maharishi Mahesh and the Beatles and all those guys.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Griffin, all those people.
Yeah.
Clint Eastwood, very popular at that point. So they put these machines all over the world. And every time there was a mass consciousness event, like, for instance, the opening ceremonies of the Olympics, and, of course, billions of people watched those ceremonies.
Yeah.
And, of course, the machines went crazy. Instead of 1010, they did 111 or 000. So they go one way or another. We wouldn't know. But they wouldn't be the random 1010.
Right.
And then they had, I think it was at one point, they had like 200 different events. The tsunami, the OJ trial, you name it. But again, now here's the interesting thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
This is what nobody notices. But I do because that's my field. There was no intention involved in these.
Exactly.
The machines were just measuring the collective consciousness. There was no intention. Nobody was saying, okay, you machine, you change. They weren't doing that. There was no intention.
I love it.
It was a byproduct of the mass consciousness itself.
So just the fact that many, many, many people were observing or aware of the same thing at the same time,
right?
Which is mass consciousness defined in a way. That's what was making, that's what was affecting these random generators, which I think are also referred to as eggs, as I recall. Yeah.
Right.
Huh. Yep. I mean, that's so. Statistically, what was the effect? How do you measure that as being like significant?
Well, when you compare it to the normal output from the cosmic radiation, it's very reliable.
Uh-huh.
It no longer is reliable like it was. It comes out to a bunch of ones and it comes out to a bunch of zeros.
Right.
So instead of 1010, it comes out 000 or 111.
Right.
We don't know which direction the machine will go.
So in a way, that's a visual way of measuring what you're talking about. If a bunch of people are meditating without intent in a city, and then you see the crime wave go down or the crime statistics go down, it's the same thing. But one case you're seeing it being shown through the crime rates going down, and the other one here you're seeing it happen in terms of the random numbers not being so random anymore.
Well, we're using deep states of higher states of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one, we're using just plain old everyday vibrations. It's another factor in this whole. That's what brings me to the idea that you got to get in the divine flow, because that's where the power is.
Get into the divine flow. So what do you mean by that exactly?
Like quantum love flow.
Yeah. I like that. That should be a bumper sticker. Get into the quantum love flow or something.
Right.
Wow. And there's so many distractions. I mean, you talk about triggers. Triggers are one thing, anxiety or fear or whatever. But then there's just the distractions of our society that must be a problem for people being able to get to that point too.
Right. Well, there's all kinds of stuff that can actually interfere. However, from my perspective, it's the whole idea of this, and Tony Robbins, like he's Mr. Rah-Rah guy. I think he finally starting to get it.
Okay.
Just recently, he said, positive thoughts don't work.
Hmm.
I know nobody's going to say, what? But that's the truth. If you're not in a higher state of consciousness, if you're not in the flow, positive thoughts work, we'd have a perfect world by now. Psychology would work. Everything would work.
Is it partly because you're coming from a position of want, which might even be looked at as greed?
Right. You're not honoring the power.
You're not honoring the power. That's what I'm starting to see here. Yeah. It's kind of an insult.
Not honoring the power. The power is like, it's like you surrender to it, and this power surrenders to you.
Wow.
That's one way to look at it.
Right. Do you think this is starting to be more understood? You talked about Robbins is starting to say that now, which is, I don't know too much about him, but it does sound very different than what he said in the past.
Well, he used to be a rah-rah guy.
Yeah.
And I was working with one of his lieutenants, and they did a study on him. They found that 90% of the people felt that this thing was transformative within the first week. They redid the study 6 months later. Only 5% thought it was transformative. So it wasn't lasting.
Oh.
And that's the value of positive thoughts. He has a huge group of people there, and that probably made for much more effect than normal people doing positive thoughts.
Right.
Because he has thousands of people, and that will be a big, huge boost to his thinking and what happens. But it's still not the same as letting go, giving up.
No,
You're not connecting it because it's about you. It's not about us.
Right.
But we are part of it. So it is about us, but it's not about us, if that makes any sense.
It does, because it's about us because we're conscious beings and humans, but it's not about us trying to get something to benefit us because we're asking for it, I think is
Right.
what you're saying. Like saying, I'm going to meditate on this so it will happen. That's not the way to go about it.
And those have huge impact, huge implications for manifestation. I've done tons of classes on manifestation. And I probably taught to 65,000 people, at least, not including all my CDs and DVDs that I sell.
Right.
And I use those principles and help people get sales and all kinds of stuff. They come from a place of giving, like you were talking about, instead of wanting. In the case of gratitude, you can use gratitude as part of that whole program. Gratitude can be a huge benefit, especially when you're reminiscing and ruminating about things.
Yeah.
And this is all because gratitude can be used as a way to reframe the negative into a positive, which is kind of like one of the things I use.
Yeah. Well, you said that.
The tricky about it is tapping is you just don't tap on affirmations. You have to convince the person that the affirmations are real. Otherwise, it won't work.
Well, walk us through that a little bit again then. So when you say tapping, what do you mean? Like certain places and use your fingers or whatever. And then what would you say and when would you say it? Because you've talked about how those are also important.
Well, that's the other part of it. Timing is everything. The tricky thing about it's not just the words. It's you got to convince the person that the words are correct. If I say the words, okay, I can do this, I can get this sale, but meanwhile in the back of your mind you're having this worry.
Yeah.
What's going to win?
Apparently the worry.
Or the positive? Yeah, exactly, because it's sitting there percolating.
So you've got to actually really get rid of that worry, literally, not just.
How can you get rid of a worry?
Okay.
If it keeps coming back.
How can you?
That's.
I'm asking for the $1 million question
You're
here.
asking how I teach everything. I can't give you everything.
Okay, that's fine.
I do. That's what I train people.
Well, that's.
The matter is, you have to learn how to let go of thoughts.
Yeah.
Can't push out negative thoughts by having negative thoughts about the negative thoughts. Doesn't work.
That just feeds it.
More negative thoughts.
That just.
See, if we're quantum beings, here's the secret. I will tell this. If we're quantum beings, it means that all of our consciousness is being created in the universe, including the negative stuff. But here is the big thing. What if we're not aware of it? If we're not aware of our doubts?
Yeah, like subconscious in a way.
Yes. That's the ultimate final frontier of consciousness. You
Yeah.
have to figure out what's in the subconscious.
Okay. I get it.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example. Every one of those 2,000 demonstrations I did in public, I did pick something easy, which is anxiety.
Hmm.
And I would say, I'll ask you, how many people I talk to, when I bring them up from the stage, think they don't have anxiety?
I think if people are being honest, almost everybody would tell you they have anxiety, but I don't know.
About half don't believe they have anxiety.
Really? Okay.
Yep. Now, if I change the word to worry, I'll get more.
Sure.
People will admit it more.
Okay.
Because they don't think worry is anxiety.
Okay. I get it.
And then when I'm done with them, it's like they're totally transformed. It's like a 10-ton weight is just lifted their shoulders. Their facial features have changed. This is after I finish tapping it all out.
I love it. Well,
And because I use the words along with it.
mhm.
So I got this anxiety. I got the world on my shoulders, all that kind of stuff. I have a whole routine of how to approach anxiety. And then because you first have to get rid of the anxiety before you can change the words. Most people don't know how to tap. You can't convince somebody that it's working if they haven't shifted.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things. But that's the first step. The
Mhm.
second step is figuring out what's in your subconscious, and that's the tricky part.
Yeah, because it's the subconscious.
But what if we were left crying in our crib?
Hmm.
You think that would cause anxiety?
Yeah. And it could be that maybe it sticks with you even much later than when you were crying in that crib, I suppose.
You have no awareness of it.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
It's in cellular memory.
Hmm.
Right. Because it's like baseball. You can't hit a baseball if you are following it with your eyes and telling your body to swing the bat.
Right.
It won't work. You have to train your muscles to hit the baseball, otherwise it won't work fast enough.
Exactly. I get it.
Same with cells. The cells in our body have memory. In fact, they have consciousness too.
You know what? It's amazing you mentioned that because just yesterday I was reading a story about transplant people who have a heart
Right.
or some other thing, and the very high level of people reporting that after they've had this transplant, including, by the way, blood infusions in some cases, that they will say that they've had big changes happen in their personality. Even things like food that they didn't like before, suddenly they like. And
Yep.
and the theory expressed in this article I was reading was that there's cellular memory that's being passed on from that donor to the recipient,
Right.
which
It's
is
incredible.
fascinating, isn't it?
Right. Again, that's more proof of collective consciousness.
See? Isn't
And we're
it?
connected.
I mean, it's so good. I wanted to
going
find
through
somebody.
our genetic code.
Yeah.
It's going through our genetic code.
And it's just so counterintuitive. I mean, we all think that all this comes from our brain, that anything about
Right.
what you like or don't like, it's because of your brain or maybe your taste buds, right? But if
Right.
you have the same taste buds in the same brain, but you've had a heart put in you from somebody else and suddenly you like hot, spicy foods and you didn't before, and it's beyond
Right.
that, by the way. It was actually personality traits. They just changed. They weren't the same person that they were before. Isn't that something?
No, and that makes sense. And again, that's the subconscious stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's a little bit more involved than I'm letting on. I'm trying to
Yeah.
simplify stuff so people can
Of course.
understand it.
Well,
But what I'm dealing with is that because we would never remember to, and Dr. Spock, to his credit, at least he, after about 35 years or 40 years, he apologized for screwing up 2 generations of people in 80 different countries since it was published in 80 different, about letting kids cry in the crib.
Really?
Right. Many people did it. Now, to women's credit, I found that many women didn't do it. It went against their grain.
Right. Went against their instincts
They
as
were
a
in
mom.
tune.
Yeah.
They knew. Somehow they knew.
Yeah.
So, but many women did, and I don't blame them because that's what the stupid doctors were telling them.
Right.
So,
Right.
and I'm not saying the doctors are stupid. That's what they believe.
Right. Right. Of course, we continue to learn. That's what research is all about, and studies and all that. I get it.
Right.
Well, here's the thing, and I'm kind of jumping back to something you mentioned earlier. If we have these studies, and we haven't gone into them too much yet, but you've kind of talked about that this transcendental meditation in a city, for instance, could lead to the lower crime rate or lower suicide rate, that type of thing. And that's something that was already being demonstrated way back in 2004. Here it is, 2024. What I'm wondering is, even though we are 20 years later, I don't feel like I've noticed any big change in terms of hearing about that being done even now.
No, it's not.
Why is that?
I think it's going to take the change of the collective consciousness.
Hmm.
So, but nowadays there's a lot more people meditating now than there was 15, 20 years ago.
For sure.
And certainly meditation's gone mainstream.
Yeah.
And prayer's gone mainstream. People are saying, prayer has an influence. People are believing in prayer more now.
Well, it's a
So
version of it.
there's been changes. It just hasn't been strong enough.
So,
Right.
yeah, it's a power in a way, which reminds me of something that I really enjoyed in your talk with Art, where he was very concerned about the power of mass consciousness. I mean, here he was doing these experiments where his listeners, millions at the same time, would think about rain and it would happen. I think maybe in one case it either it did happen where it rained too much, or he was worried about, gosh, could we have a flood? And then the other example he talked about was where we all think about turning back a hurricane, from Florida. But what if it goes out and becomes more powerful and then comes back, right? I mean, I loved it how he was.
I think one of the
was
reasons
curious,
why
but he was cautious, right?
I think one of the reasons he was so successful is he had a huge group of people listening to his show at the same time.
Exact live. Yeah.
Collective consciousness.
Right.
And the other is that he actually believed it.
There you go. That's true. That's right.
Both, I think he's been about the best, but I think it's because of his numbers.
Yeah.
He had so many people thinking along the same lines that it was like it was like a mass. They were all doing they were all kind of like doing a mantra meditation, except with thoughts.
Right. And in those cases, though, it was with intent, which I think is interesting because
they
were thinking about, let's make it rain. How do we reconcile that?
He was amazing. He got a lot of that. He got a lot of success with that.
So that can work. So that can work too, but maybe it's because there were so many people doing it. In other words, it's a different approach than being non-intentional when you're meditating, right?
Right.
Huh.
If we have millions of people, which is what he had. Remember, at that point he was the only one doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
He was like a pioneer, and he was like an oasis in the desert. And anybody who wanted to hear this stuff was listening to his show.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm not in any way negating George Norrie. George Norrie is incredible too.
Absolutely.
But he was, at that time, there was nobody else.
No. So he was worried about it because of, I think there's two things that he mentioned that make perfect sense to me. One would be good intentions, but a bad outcome. In other words, you're trying to move that hurricane away, and that's great, but then it gets too strong because it goes from a 3 to a 5, and you can't stop it the second time it comes back. So unintended consequences. But then there was the aspect of kind of evil actors he was worried about. People that...
Right, he was very, very much into that.
Right? And you definitely pushed back against that. And I remember kind of what you said, but I'm curious how you would put it now. But you were not willing, you didn't really feel the same way. You felt like, I guess for lack of a better word, there was almost like a safety check in there that would prevent that from happening.
Safety valve.
Safety valve, yeah.
You can't go against the positive, so that the destruction would be that powerful. You can't go against God.
Well, you said laws of nature, I think even maybe you said.
Yeah, laws of nature, right.
What did you mean by that then? Because I love that. That there's like a... Yeah, go ahead.
Because there's a positive force. There's a creative force of the whole universe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they need destruction in order to create. So the two have to merge. And they kind of negate each other a little bit in order for them to coexist.
Interesting.
So there's a built-in. It's possible you could have some negativity, and right now I'd say there's probably more negativity than positivity. I think we're out of balance now. I think everybody would agree with that.
It feels that way.
Yeah. So we're in that state right now where there's more negative than positive. But we can turn that around with more people meditating, more people praying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I'm trying to get people to pray with higher states of consciousness so that they have more of an impact.
Mm-hmm. I love
I
it.
don't think I mentioned that 20 years ago.
Well, I was just going to say a lot has happened in 20 years.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, when you think about, 20 years ago, that was obviously way before the pandemic and some of the other things that have
right.
just that we don't have to even go down that road. Right? We want to be positive, but I would have to
Right.
say that if I had to pick between the two periods, which one had more negativity around me, it would certainly be now versus then.
Yeah. I mean, and I think you know, I think part of it is we need to go through negative in order to appreciate the positive.
Hmm.
I hate to say that, but there is an element of that.
No, that's another theme that like I say, I've had mentioned to me. Um, a guest who we talked about working with souls that are trapped, a soul bridge type
Right.
person,
Right.
and how we're going through all these things that are happening now, but it's part of that process of getting to a better place.
Right.
So maybe that's kind of what you're saying too. Hmm.
Yeah. But again, when I work with people, I do go after the negative because you have to bring up the right. In order to get to the subconscious, you have to bring up the right brain pathways,
Mm-hmm.
and the brain pathways are almost always negative that I have to go after.
Ah,
So I use the negative as a way to heal the negative.
I
It's like
love.
you have to get rid of a thorn. You got to use a little knife or something to go dig deep and get it out.
Well, I was going to
You got
ask you
and
about a different thing that I really found interesting. It's a concept that I've kind of done some research on my own, and that is of precognition, um,
oh,
which was also discussed with Art in that show. I'm going to give my own kind of definition of how I understand what that term means, and that means that we, at some level, kind of know what's going to happen before it happens, and
beautiful.
this has been studied and shown various ways that it's true, right?
Right, right. I can cite some research.
Yeah, please.
This study is really intriguing. What they did was they had pictures, and the pictures were one of two types: nature scenes, really positive nature scenes, and negative people in morgues. And they would present the pictures randomly, so you didn't know which picture was going to come up. And what they were trying to do, they were trying to measure to see if the morgue picture would create more anxiety in the person.
Right.
So they anticipated there would be a spike of anxiety every time the person would see the morgue picture, and not with the pleasant nature. But they wanted to see if it interfered with each other. And these were, like I said, really gruesome photos.
Uh,
And so what they found was, and this is done in numerous studies, that there was indeed a spike of anxiety when the people were looking at the morgue picture. But it happened actually before the morgue picture was presented and not before the positive photo was presented.
that just
So, in other words, they didn't know what was coming, but they did know what was coming. Deep
right.
down, they must have known what was coming.
But
It's one
so
of my favorite studies of all time.
so what's the explanation then? What's
It
going
means
on?
that our conscious mind gets in the way, which is what I've been telling you all the time. You
Okay.
got to get out of the way.
Yeah. So,
Yep,
but so is it a quantum thing going on there?
I think so, because they did this. They did this study 3 times, and they even looked at MRIs.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was an fMRI, and in the brain to see what happened in the brain. The whole brain would light up with anxiety about 3 seconds before the negative photo was presented. Pretty amazing stuff,
Well,
but not before the positive one.
exactly. And so, and the reason I'm thinking quantum,
Right,
that's timeless.
right.
So the rules
On
of
time and
time,
space. Right,
right?
right,
That,
right.
that
Beautiful, beautiful.
yeah, the quantum field is timeless, and so therefore, it's not that it could be before because
After doesn't matter.
yeah,
That's quantum. That's quantum.
boy,
And that's the reason why intention experiments don't work, because you're collapsing the quantum into time and space boundaries. You're making a particle out of it.
mm,
So if you're going to manifest, you have to get beyond time and space boundaries, because you want to change that.
you're constraining it by doing that. Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
If you're collapsing it into a particle, it no longer is in the quantum.
I love it.
That's why all that stuff does. And that kind of answers that question. It took us about an hour. We finally got back to it.
Well, no, I mean it's just kind of it is one of those that you almost have to go around in a circle to get back to where you
Right.
were. I think.
Exactly. Well put.
Well, when I tried
Exactly.
when I tried to think about this like in a practical way, let's say you're somebody who, okay, wow, that's pretty neat. how could I use this or how could I test it or whatever. And here's an interesting thought I had. I'd like to know what you think. Think about the gambler, okay?
Right.
Somebody playing blackjack with sitting there at the table, the dealer's on the other side, and would it be possible for them to be able to tap into some feeling that lets them know
Yeah.
that that
Yeah.
card that would otherwise would be asking for is going to put them over the top of 21?
Right.
Isn't that interesting? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if people can home that feeling or whatever it is.
Right. No, I agree. I 100% agree.
Wouldn't that be
I
something?
used to do that. I used to use it with gambling a little bit.
You're kidding.
I didn't like being in smoke-filled rooms. I just couldn't handle it. And
Right.
then but I had a system where I could make money 8 out of 10 times.
Wow. By doing this very
And
thing.
then I just picked the table. But eventually got too much of a hassle, so I thought it wasn't worth it because it took a long time, and the people were smoking in those days, and I didn't
Right.
want to mess around with it.
Oh, I agree.
It was just too much of a hassle.
Okay. But it's interesting
I
that
just wanted to see if I could do it. That's the main thing. Well, and I'll be quite candid with you. I used to have all these dreams that came true. Finally, I told God, you know what? You're not going to believe this. I told him I didn't want to know what was going to happen.
Ooh.
Seriously.
Yeah, because you didn't.
Right. And I said, unless it was something that I needed. And then what I do, I use it with my clients.
Mm-hmm.
Then I can channel. But I want to teach people how to channel
Right.
because it's not that hard.
Mm-hmm.
You can tune into it with a higher state of consciousness through love and tapping.
Mm-hmm.
I can show people how to channel.
Well,
with
yeah.
tapping.
Okay, I love that. Now, so let me tell you about a personal experience that I think kind of fits into some of what we're saying.
Right.
Maybe it has no connection though to what we've talked about so far. But back in the 1980s, when I was a college student, and back when turntables were the thing, which I still have one, but back then they were all you had. There were no CDs, obviously. There were no.
Right.
Yeah. And I had this amazing moment where I was standing in the living room of my apartment, and I hadn't been drinking. I didn't use drugs. It was nothing like that. But I had this moment where I don't know. It was almost like an outside force was telling me, "Hey, do you want to really see reality?" Is the best I can put it. And I had this sense of none of this around me is as it looks. It's just kind of an illusion. It's all atoms, but yet it looks like, it's all different. And and as I was thinking that way, and I felt very calm. I felt a sense of purpose. And
Right.
I came upon this thought. I said, well, okay, prove to me that this is happening and that you're going to kind of pierce through reality and prove it to me that it's kind of an illusion and all that. And I said, well, actually, I just said in my head, and I knew I could do it. This is the key. Okay, I knew that I could make my turntable, which was playing a song, I knew I could make it slow down and come to a stop. And when I say I knew, it'd be like right now, let's say somebody listening is sitting at a table and there's a glass of water. They know they can reach it and take a drink. It's not a question of can I make that happen.
Right.
It was that clear. And sure enough, as I looked at the turntable with that incredible confidence, it happened. The music slowed down, and it came to a complete stop.
Wow.
And then I thought in my head, okay, thank you. And then it started back up again and at the normal speed. That's what
Wow.
happened. What was that? And does that have any connection to the kind of thing we're talking about right now?
Yes. Those are some of the yogic powers, actually. They have yogic powers to test whether you're getting closer to the quantum.
Mm,
And even though you give them all up when you get to the quantum, you have to go through these tests to make sure you're on the right track.
a test.
And knowing things before they happen is one of those tests.
Right.
And so, because you have to have a test, otherwise somebody can say that they're there and they can say what's going on, and then it may not be true.
Right.
So you have to have a way of measuring the test, and whether they're there or not. So yes, that's definitely one of the yogic powers.
I mean, I thought of it at the time as I was making it happen, but now I've often wondered, no, it wasn't really that. It was something else doing it for me to show me something. I don't know which it was.
Well, it could be. That could be.
Yeah.
Because in the end, that's really what it is.
Hmm.
It's not us doing it anyway.
Right.
But part of it is belief. I'd say when I work on clients, the most important thing I work on is the belief that they can do it.
Right.
Because most people don't believe they can do it, especially when I tell them you have to let go.
Right.
I got to convince them to do it, which I do. But in order to do that, you have to do something to believe that. So you did something, now you believe.
Yeah.
See, when you do something, it's easier for you to believe the second time.
Yeah, and I believed it going into it. I mean, there was no doubt. This wasn't like an
Right,
experiment where can I do it? I
right,
knew I could do it. I just wanted to do it to kind
right,
of that final little nail that okay, yep, I can do it
right.
or it happened, you know? Yeah. Huh.
Part of it is belief. There is belief. There is no doubt about it. But
Yeah.
it's not like a fake belief. You're trying to trying to play with yourself to actually believe it. No, it's something you have to go through something to make it believe. That really is belief. It's not like It's not like wishful thinking.
Mm,
It's not the same. It's belief. It's okay. This is going to happen. It's like this is
exactly.
going to happen.
Exactly.
That's
Which
that's what
which
you
which has been talked about when people want to have an out of body experience. They talk about it in their mind as like I'm having a out of body experience as they go to sleep. Not I want to have one.
right.
Yeah. Huh.
Well, in a sense, we all drift off into never land when we sleep.
Yeah.
So we do have dreams, but most of the dreams are just getting rid of stress.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's other dreams which are where you're foretelling the future or whatever.
Right.
Sometimes we have things that are messages for us. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it can go either direction. But yeah, I agree 100%.
Well, and another thing I wanted to get your thoughts on. So way back in 2004, probably the biggest platform for mass consciousness, in other words, people thinking of the same thing, would have been, well, an example would be the internet. I mean, it was around then, so people could be reading
Right,
the same story at a higher level than they'd ever have maybe in civilization up until the internet, right? But
right,
but so much is now ramped up since then. I mean, you didn't really have social media then, but then Facebook launched in like I think 2008, which was four
right,
years later. iPhone appeared about 3 years after that show in 2004. Now,
right.
almost everybody in the world seems to have a smartphone with news alerts, with TikTok and all these other things where they're aligning with millions of other people on the same thing at the same time at a level that we've never been able to do in human history. And I wonder, it's almost like a default mass consciousness every day among all of us. And I wonder what that's doing, what effect that's having.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Here's one of the other things. One of the things that COVID taught us is the need for interactions, human interaction.
Mm.
And I don't like what I see with these everybody talking. The thing is about the heart, the research that was done on the heart. It was done with people in close proximity with each other, within 12, 15 feet. And they were talking to them. They weren't doing it over the phone. So first of all, there's a lot of people that say that the phone energy, especially electrum, the phone and number 5, whatever.
Yeah, 5G. Mm-hmm.
5G. In fact, I think in some places in Europe they banned it. So,
Mm-hmm.
but certainly for kids.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that it's healthy energy. To be quite candid with you,
I get it.
and I
Mm,
think it isn't.
it's a different.
And also I think it's substitution for real feelings and real love, which is what we're going through now. Which is why so many people are confused about themselves right now,
Right.
especially kids,
Mm-hmm.
because they don't have that. They need that interaction with people, and we used to get it when we were kids. We didn't do things on the phone, or we didn't play games. We went out and did real life things. We'd go camping. We'd do this. We'd
Yeah.
do that. We played baseball. We played football. We played this.
Mm-hmm.
I had little jobs. I worked for the neighbors.
Mm.
So we were doing stuff with people,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that was the difference, a huge difference. And now we're not doing that. We're not capturing that. According to the love people that did the research on the love, you have to be within 15 feet, and if you feel love towards somebody, it actually changes their brain waves. But see, that's not happening according to them if you're not within close proximity with them.
Right.
I think you can still do it quantumly, because quantum is beyond time and space. But I don't think this is a good time for us. I think that's the reason why there's so much hate right now, because we can't. I mean, in the old days, Republicans and Democrats could come together, have a few beers, and together they could come up with a compromise. Everybody was happy. They weren't perfect, but it was, it was at least something they could get done. Nobody hated each other.
Yeah.
Now they hate each other. There's something wrong here.
Yeah.
We're not. There shouldn't be this hate. There should be. We want to see our brothers and sisters rise high, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not doing that anymore.
So in
And
a
I
sense,
think
technology is working against us, even if it
yeah,
involves a kind of a basic concept of we're all thinking the same thing, we'll all look at the same thing.
right.
It's being done electronically. I
So
think you've hit
anyway,
on
that's
something
just
there. I think you've hit on something there. I think that it's more of a, for lack of a better word, negative than positive. Even though we're addicted to it, we want to check our stuff all the time. Every time we're doing that, we're also actually missing out on the opportunity to do something with somebody that's right there around us physically, that where we're having
right,
all those other things happen, right?
right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, there's a
And
message there.
people are afraid. So
Mm-hmm.
it's. I know I can't meditate when I'm under electrical wiring, one of
Mm-hmm.
those big power cords. I
Mm-hmm.
can't meditate at all, and I'm a really good meditator.
Wow, interesting. You mean
So
like the power line type thing, you mean?
yeah,
Oh.
oh yeah,
Hmm.
oh yeah. I mean, I was staying at this guy's house in California, and I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't meditate. And I said, And I said, do you have a power line around it? He said, yeah, there's one outside your room. I said, what? It is not a big one. It's just going from the transformer down here to your house. No big deal.
Yeah.
I said, well, it is a big deal. So yeah, I mean, we're not meant to. That's not a good thing. And yeah, and it's really funny. The quantum stuff becomes apparent when you do this.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give you. This is a mind-blowing kind of thing. Most of my clients are female for one reason or another.
Okay.
And most of them are trying to find relationships or trying to better their relationships.
Hmm.
And not all of them, but I'm just saying there's a good percentage of them.
Yeah.
I'd say 60, 70%. So a lot of people are wanting to manifest, so they will come to me and I help them with that. But anyway, she comes and says, my husband's this, he's that, he's always this, he never pays attention to me, he's just, all he cares about is himself, and he's this and he's that. And I said, I don't really want to be with him. I said, okay. I said, let's work on you, and we'll make what we'll do is we'll release all your trauma, release all your fears, and then we'll make a wise decision as to what you should do here.
Mm.
And so, because we want you to be free of all this other stuff so you can make a good decision. So pretty soon, then we start working on all this stuff, and pretty soon I start working on her negative thoughts about her husband. Remember, from a quantum perspective, you have negative thoughts about somebody, then if the positive thoughts that people can feel, they can also feel the negative thoughts. So anyway, we change her. We don't do anything with him. Okay?
Yeah, I get it.
That's what happens.
Which
He changes.
Which is kind of good because that's probably a lot easier to do than changing somebody else anyway.
You get it. You hit the nail on the head. You hit the brilliant. This is the whole thing. Since we're quantum beings, we don't need to change everybody else. We need to change ourselves. And that's what my research said. We can change, and that's what Arbella's trying to get at. We can change the whole world by changing ourselves. But see, people don't get it. Now I just explained why it would work.
Yeah.
And this one last example is one that's very practical with people. People see that all the time. When I change, all of a sudden things come to me instead of me trying to fight to get them.
Yeah.
That's what happens. You're a receptor instead of if you're coming from a place of abundance, then you attract more abundance. It's real simple. And if you're coming from a place of divine love, then you're attracting more love. If you're trying to get a partner, you just have to become love. Now, that's easier said than done, by the way, but that's the principle that we're working on.
Okay.
So all of what I do really is to change the brain pathways that are holding us back.
Right. Exactly.
And here's the other part of it. When we're growing up, things happen to us. People say, "Oh, I was just a kid. It doesn't make any difference." And I said, "Well, no, you got it wrong, because that's when the brain is being formed. That's when permanent brain pathways are being formed. So little things that happen to you are not little things. So let's go after the times you were bullied, or let's go after the times that you were left crying in the crib, or let's go after the time your dad and mom were criticizing you all the time. Because invariably, you know what happens when dad and mom are criticizing you all the time? Your hidden subconscious criticizes you all the time. and you pick partners that criticize you all the time.
Which is what you hear, that cycle, like if it's
Oh,
if it's
I
violent.
hear it all the time. You hit the nail on the head there, too.
Hmm.
It has nothing to do with what we want. Love for us is, if we come up criticizing parents, love for us is criticism.
Right. Yeah, right. Believe me.
Unbelievable.
I saw that. I was an attorney for many years and worked with dysfunctional families and so forth, and many times represented children who were taken out of the home of an abusive home type
Right.
situation. You know what? They almost always wanted to go back to it, the kids, no matter
Yep.
how bad it
Yep.
was.
That's what happens with people that have been sexually abused. They go back and do the same thing over and over again.
Because that's how they've been taught in a way. That's
Right.
what love
Right.
is.
That's what love is. That's their brain pathway.
So that's what you're going to get. Makes
So,
sense. Well, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing, particularly in terms of helping people with these different approaches of having positive change occur in their life, right?
right.
And I feel proud that we're helping disseminate those concepts a little bit here on this
Oh,
show.
yeah. That's brilliant. What's a brilliant thing you're doing, and I think it's going to help change the collective conscious, which is what we need. We need more numbers.
Right.
What you're doing is brilliant.
Well, thank you. I don't know if it is or not, but I'm honored you would say it. And I do know that you're available to help people in a more practical way. If you could just give us information about your website and the type of services you have, as well as people want to get a hold of you, how they would do that.
Well, right now, my website is called The Universe Lies Within, but I think we're going to change it to Tap into Bliss.
Ah, okay.
I've had this universe for like 25 years, but nobody can spell The Universe Lies Within. So every time I go on to Art Bell's or George Norrie's show, I change the name to Tap into Bliss,
Okay.
which was the name of my DVD, and it's easy to remember, Tap into Bliss.
Yes, yes.
So that's probably where you'll be able to find me the best.
Okay.
Tap into Bliss. And my website's just been redone, or being redone now as we speak.
Right.
So I'm going to put I'm going to have seminars on Zoom so people can attend them. They don't have to go very far. And I'm going to have private clients through Zoom, or else, in person if you live close to Kansas City. But I do go on tour, and I will probably start going on tour again.
Okay.
So you can see me in person there.
Right.
But I can do, we can do people on Zoom, we can do them on Skype and on the phone and all that kind of stuff. So
I love it.
I'm available.
Right.
But the main thing is we're going to do these things, and we're going to have even weekly meetings. You can join with a group of people tapping. So we're going to do group tapping.
Okay.
And people can ask for a question and ask for personal problem. If they have a personal problem, they want a group to work on it, we're going to be able to do that. So I'm going to have a group quantum tapping session we'll have 2 or 3 each week, so people can attend when they join. They can attend, and they can go to anyone they want to. So we're doing all kinds of new things with my website.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Well,
So,
I have loved this conversation. I think that these are the types of things that the more people know about this, the better they can make their own lives. And if they need specific help, they can go a little further, like I say, and contact you. But just to get that thinking of everything we just said out there has got to be an example of that positivity, I think, that we're talking about, that needs to be there for things to get better. So,
right.
yeah.
All right. Well,
All right.
keep in touch. I'd love to talk more, and I'm so excited you're doing this and helping out the collective consciousness of people. We definitely need it. We need more people like you doing this.
Oh,
I love it. You're kind of recreating Art Bell. He was an amazing guy.
exactly.
And you know what? You've already kind of did the first thing he did. That's when he first started doing his psychic stuff. He did something that he was playing with his computer or something.
That's
remember?
right. Yeah, I
can't
do.
remember you were kind of like, maybe you were born to be following his footsteps.
Hey, I'll take that as a major compliment.
So that's how he started out, and then he went bigger, and he was actually having very good success with it.
Absolutely.
Much more so than most people. Right.
Absolutely. Well, you're too kind. I appreciate that. And once again, thanks so much for taking the time out. We'll be in touch and probably have you back on again at some point, even if maybe in a second season or something like that. But I can't thank you
sounds
enough.
like a plan.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Keep the faith, buddy. We'll talk to you later.
You too. All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye now.
Well, I, for one, would say that Dr. Landrith certainly did deliver on the hope of expanding our perception of the world around us including the ways in which human consciousness, acting all by itself as an invisible yet powerful force, can affect things, can change the world around us, right? I mean, first of all, if the mere act of people meditating can improve key aspects of our society, like reducing the crime rate, even when, or maybe because, the people meditating are not even focusing on that goal? Wow. And the burning question remains then, if this is all true, then why has this practice not been embraced by cities and nations across the planet? I've thought about this, so I think the explanation would involve a mix of things, don't you? One is the simple disbelief on the part of traditional types of people in power that this is possible, that our consciousness acting alone can affect the world. And then, of course, there's their understandable fear of being branded crackpots, right? I mean, the same reason people don't talk about UFOs or Bigfoot. Also, think about it. There was no obvious money to be made by anyone that attempted to create a system to improve things around us via the process of meditating or groups of people focusing their thoughts on a common issue that they want to change, right? It could even affect other professions, such as, I guess, police forces and jails. So maybe there's an incentive not to try this on a large scale. Now, there's also the fascinating concept of precognition. I want to ask you, so haven't you always, in a way, perhaps in the back of your mind, just kind of felt that precognition exists? Speaking for myself, I think I always have. And I think our society kind of has, because isn't precognition another phrase or word for intuition? Or having a gut feeling about something? I think so. And I also think, though, that we're just all so caught up in the many demands of our lives. The society we're in, our jobs, our concern about our kids, that kind of thing. All of that really prevents us from tapping into, to recognizing those signals of precognition. But wouldn't you like to tap into it? Doesn't it seem that if one were able to, they would be able to make much better decisions and generally live happier, smoother lives? You could avoid bad and dangerous situations, it would seem. Well, I tell you what, I would love to hear from any of you that have experienced precognition moments. And of course, any feedback about this episode and the podcast in general is always welcome. You can reach me by email at kevinkelly@midnightontheprairie.com. I also encourage you to reach out to Dr. Landrith and to take a look at his webpage, where you can learn more about his work and the services that he offers to help improve your lives. And finally, please, if you have not already, I would love it if you would support my efforts to keep this podcast going into a second season and beyond by visiting patreon.com/Midnight on the Prairie. All right, my friends, always remember that wherever you are in space and time, here it is always midnight on the prairie.